Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick, and welcome back to another episode of me reviewing your user-submitted X-Wing list. Now, this one's a little bit awkward, because I actually recorded this very episode with Justin about 2 weeks ago, and then about a day later, the FAQ was announced, with all the details of what's going on with Genius, MindLink, Jumpmaster, and Biggs and all that kind of stuff. And what happens was, I came to edit this video and I discovered that basically half the stuff I was saying was completely wrong. What we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the Scum Captain Nym. And a lot of the lists that you guys submitted either included Dengar, which of course has had a massive nerf, so a lot of the stuff on him has to change, or the Bomblet Generator and the Genius combo. And for those of you who've been following, the FAQ basically nerfs that combo completely. It's almost unusable. Genius himself is still completely usable with other bombs, it's just he has that caveat that makes him a little bit risky when it comes to the Bomblet Generator. Rather than just not do this video at all, I decided, you know what, I'm still going to review all these lists and talk about the errata and the ways we can kind of work around it, because I feel like the changes that affect these lists that we're looking at today are not backbreaking. These lists can still function. They might need a bit of tweaking. All the cards that have been errated in these examples are completely usable still. It's just that their power level's been brought down to something which I guess is a bit more fair in the meta overall. We'll talk a bit more about the actual meta and the FAQ a bit later on, but for the time being, let's take a look at these lists. And let's start off by having a look at the Scum version of Captain Nym. He is a 30-point Skirg bomber, pilot skill 8 with an APT. You may ignore friendly bombs. When a friendly ship is defending, if the attacker measures range through a friendly bomb token, the defender may add 1 evade result. So there's two very important things going on there. First of all, Captain Nym can fly through friendly bombs, or he can be near a friendly bomb that detonates and not get affected by it. Very powerful. It means that the Genius combo right off the bat is really powerful because he can drop a bomb after he does his maneuver. The bomb goes off. He's within the range 1 radius of the bomb, but he does not get affected by it. If another ship drops a bomb that activates on collision, like a proxy mine or a cluster mine, he can fly right over it and there's no issues. There's also the factor that when a friendly ship measures through a bomb on their defense, they add 1 evade result. And this is actually straight up better than having an obstructed shot. Adding an evade result is better than rolling an evade dice. Obviously, an evade dice only gives you a 3 in 8 chance of evading. A full evade result is so much better than that. So it's very powerful. Basically, Captain Nym is saying from the offset, I want bombs to be all over the map because my ships and myself get massive bonuses from it. Pretty straightforward, pretty effective. This is a really solid pilot. I love to fly it a lot. And clearly you guys too, based on what you've sent me. Now I'm going to start these reviews by looking at the list that's going to get hurt by the FAQ most of all. And that's this one by Otaris 2099. And I'm not going to say this is terrible or unusable, whatever. Look, we know that this has just had a big FAQ hit. These lists were all submitted before the FAQ was announced, so it's not like I can say, oh, you guys got it wrong, whatever. Let's actually talk about how we can adjust these and make them more usable again. This is the classic Captain Nym and Dengar combo. Very powerful. It's a variation on it. Most of these builds I've seen don't include, for example, missiles on Dengar, and indeed they can no longer include missiles because he's lost those upgrade slots. But apart from that, it's all pretty straightforward. I see a lot of these where Captain Nym has a TLT. Auto Blaster with accuracy corrector is just fine. There's nothing wrong with either of those. It basically comes down to personal preference. But right off the bat, we have to look at these two builds and think about, okay, now we know that these things have changed. How can we adjust these to kind of work around that? Obviously, with Captain Nym, we have the Bomblet Generator and we have Genius. And while Genius is still usable with the Bomblet Generator, remember he's only 0 points, so you could take him even if you're never going to use him. He's very much hampered by if you use Genius's ability with the Bomblet Generator, the Bomblet Generator goes away, which is a bit sad. I mean, look, if Captain Nym is on, say, 1 or 2 hull and he only gets 1 more drop left, he'll do it out of desperation. And if you really can't afford to take any other astromech, then that's fine. But the reality is of what's going on here is that unique salvage astromech slot on Captain Nym, granted through the Havoc title, has suddenly become a lot less valuable. Indeed, the Havoc title on Captain Nym overall has become a lot less valuable. And it almost begs the question, do we just drop it completely, forget about the system slot, and put a crew on instead? And I think there's a good argument to do that. I mean, obviously you wouldn't have your Auto Blaster and an accuracy corrector combo, But you could drop off Havoc, Genius, and Auto Blaster and Accuracy Corrector and put on TLT and, say, an Intel Agent. Or maybe if you want to be a bit more adventurous, you could take, say, Outlaw Tech. Something very powerful with Talon Roll. It means that Nym is always tokening up every turn. Could have potential, could be terrible, I don't know. It's something we have to experiment with. Taking the Bomber Generator is just fine. You don't really strictly need Genius to make Bomber Generator really strong. It's great as it is. And that's just a few things to think about. Obviously, there's no right or wrong answer here. I'm just sort of spitballing ideas. Considering how new this FAQ is, it's been in effect for, what, 3 days now at the time of recording this? There's a lot of scope for experimentation here, and I don't think this hurts Captain Nym at all. I think that just means we have to take other options. And looking at Dengar, obviously no more Torps, no more Salvage Astromech. Very, very sad. But ultimately, I look at this build and think, if we just drop those off, it's not getting hurt too much. I mean, we're saving 6 points, and those points could go over to Captain Nym into a TLT, for example. There's definitely scope to invest there. You can also factor in the point that we can no longer use guidance chips, there's no point taking it, so you could take engine upgrades instead. And if we had engine upgrades, we could turn expertise into push the limits, get a really sort of action-efficient version of Dengar. I don't know whether push the limits or expertise is demonstrably better than each other, it's just a different way of building him. Expertise is fantastic. Anything that gives Dengar an offensive boost like expertise or predator is always strong because he can attack more than once every round, meaning that he gets double the amount of value out of anything that boosts his attack, so it's quite cool. So Ataris 2099, don't give up on this, have a play around with it, and you guys in the comments, if there's any way to sort of improve on this, let us know, because I think this is something we have to discuss and sort of nut out the best way to get around all of this. Alright, this one is by Mr. Joshua Lane. It cost 98 points. We got Captain Nym, Threek, and Nadru Salak. Captain Nym has Veteran Instincts, Auto Blaster, Bomber Generator Havoc, Advanced Sensors, Engine Upgrades, and the free slots there, so maybe we should just chuck in Genius. Just saying. We have Thweek, Stub Up Mark II, Virago, Fire Control Systems, and Auto Thrusters. Now, Drew Salak has Lone Wolf, Cluster Missiles, Glitter Stim, and Guidance Chips. So right off the bat, Drew Salak, this is a very typical Lone Wolf build for him. It has an amazing Alpha Strike of shooting 8 dice with those cluster missiles because his ability adds a red dice to both of those attacks. Both of those attacks can be boosted by Glitter Stim, so all your focuses become hits. Lone Wolf means on both of those attacks you can reroll the blank, and Guidance Chips, of course, changes any one result into a hit across all of that. So there's a lot of inbuilt insurance. It basically means there's a real good chance you're just going to get 8 hits out of that cluster missile, which is just disgusting. But it's something we've had in the meta for a very long time. It's very much a very fun build. Costs a total of 25 points, and it's doing quite well for 25 points. There are things that get around it like aces and that kind of thing, but any sort of big ships with low agility like a Decimator or a Ghost just hates seeing a Drusalak with this build. Really punishes them. Thweek, yeah, pretty straightforward, pretty cool. I actually flew a version of this at PAX with advanced sensors and inertial dampeners, and I think there's a perfectly good case of fire control systems. Just not my preference. It means that you're getting a lot of attack efficiency out of Thweek. The main reason I like advanced sensors with him is because his ability to take your enemy pilot abilities means advanced sensors suddenly gives you combos that your opponent doesn't have access to. Thweek is always kind of destined to be the annoying little brother of whatever he's copying, if that makes any sense. So he's always sort of in the shadow of the ship that he has copied, meaning he's never quite as good, but when you give him advanced sensors, suddenly you're giving Thweek toys that its enemy cannot deal with. Moving on to Captain Nym. Now, obviously here, we have the Bomber Generator, and if you want to fill that Astromech slot with Genius, you can. It's free. There's no reason why you wouldn't. And to be honest, even with the FAQ, if you have no points to invest in other upgrades, you may as well put Genius on here. I mean, at the end of the day, you still might use this ability out of desperation. You're not punished for doing that. The Bomber Generator is still strong, even if you completely ignore Genius for the entire game. And as I was saying before, there's always a case now that Genius has lost a lot of value, that you just don't take Havoc and you use the 3 points from advanced sensors into something else. But if your preference is advanced sensors, then that's fine. It's really solid. You've got engine upgrades on this ship, so advanced sensors comboing very nicely with that. Basically, because the Scope Bomber already has barrel roll, having barrel roll and boost and advanced sensors means you have a whole plethora of options that once your ship activates as to where it could end up. based on the fact that you can boost a barrel roll before or after you move. And Veteran Instincts means you're pretty much always going to fly last. So even though there is scope to change what is here, I'd honestly just slap on Genius and just keep it like that. It's solid, it's really fun. The extra positioning ability means that you're going to be able to set up the bomblet generator for the next turn perfectly every time. And Auto Blaster is a solid include here. You could do TLT, but honestly, looking across the rest of your list, there's really nowhere else to shave off points. If you really want to fly these three guys together, Auto Blaster is a solid option. Alright, moving on to just one more list that gets walloped by this new FAQ. This is by Mr. Farmer GM1. Farmer GM1, you actually submitted the very first list I reviewed, so thank you for submitting more. Please keep that up. We have Captain Nym, Constable Zuvio, and a Syndicate Thug. Captain Nym with Veteran Instinct, Bomblet Generator, Havoc, Advanced Sensors, and Genius. Constable Zuvio with VI, Cad Bane, 2 Cluster Mines, and Primed Thrusters. And the Syndicate Thug has the standard TLT Thug build, as in TLT and Unhinged Astromech, but you've added on the bomb loadout, extra munitions, and cluster mines. So for 6 points, you have 2 more cluster mines, which is quite cool. And considering you're comboing this alongside Captain Nym, it makes a lot of sense. Cluster mines are really good at using the second part of his text, where if you measure through bombs, you get to have that free evade result, which is just really solid. It's a 31-point Syndicate Thug, which is pushed a lot harder than I'd like, but considering you have bombs in that, which as a rule of thumb, I think bombs are okay to go a little bit overboard on based on how they're performing in the meta right now, and the fact that you get that ability from Captain Nym, I think that's not a bad investment of 6 points. But moving back over to Captain Nym, now obviously the elephant in the room here is Genius and Bomblet Generator. Having said that, it's not a terrible option. You still have advanced sensors, the barrel roll and that kind of stuff, so you still might just want to keep it the way it is. But I think there is an obvious thing that we can do here to improve 2 of these ships here, because we also, if we move down the page here, have Mr. Constable Zuvio. And Constable Zuvio is stacked quite hard. In fact, what do we got here? 31 points, if I'm counting correctly. 27, 28, yep, 31 points overall. And that is really a lot more than I would generally like to stack onto Constable Zuvio. I actually prefer on Constable Zuvio the Bomblet Generator. The reason I like that is because you get to use it turn after turn after turn, and you get the maximum amount of effect out of his ability. Now, sure, dropping a cluster mine with a red maneuver does have a lot of value, I get that. Coupled with the fact that he's a bit over bloated in terms of what's a good comfortable points value for him, I think there's a great case to take the Bomblet Generator over this. Going down to 26 points, I feel, is just a lot stronger. And basically that frees up the points on Captain Nym to take the cluster mines. And if you take the cluster mines on Captain Nym, you can use that unique salvaged astromech to use the new guy, R4E1, which allows you to drop bombs even when you're stressed. Which is really cool. You're going to get a lot of value out of this build because advanced sensors means you can drop these bombs before, after you do a maneuver, and it doesn't matter if you're stressed, doesn't matter if you do a red maneuver, you can always drop these bombs. And I think in this instance, the cluster mines is going to be more valuable on Captain Nym. Now, when me and Justin recorded this video and talked about this list, I actually said this regardless, but now we have more information because of this new FAQ. I absolutely think this is the right call to make. Genius just does not have enough value in this list to really push it in the direction you want, and I just think switching over the bomb loadout on Nym and Zuvio is going to make this a lot better, in my opinion. I think just the efficiency of what's going on here just makes a lot more sense if you do it that way. It also means that Zuvio is internally quite strong, so if he sort of flies away from Captain Nym, or rather Captain Nym flies away from Zuvio, because let's face it, he's in a quad jumper, he has no maneuverability whatsoever, he can operate by himself effectively, which is really, really cool. Apart from that, really solid list. I really like this a lot. I love the balance of these 3 ships together. It just makes a lot of sense, and I think you're going to get a lot of use out of Captain Nym's ability, so well done with that. Okay, I've got 2 more builds to go through here, and thankfully neither of these have been affected by the FAQ, which is really cool. This one is by Mr. Zomboid Killer for 98 points. We have Nym and Sol Sixxa, 2 skirts together, really cool. Both of them have expertise, TLT, and extra munitions and proxy mines. Nym also has cluster mines, Havoc, Minefield Mapper, and R4E1, and Sol Sixxa has Cad Bane Bomblet Generator. Awesome. Okay, now What's also interesting about this, and again, this is something we didn't know when I originally recorded this episode, is the clarification of extra munitions and the minefield mapper. Basically, there was a bit of confusion, the idea that, oh, extra munitions means we can drop more bombs at the start of the game, and that's not the case. Minefield mapper says you must be able to drop a certain amount of equipped upgrade cards, and extra munitions does not increase the amount of equipped upgrade cards. But the way it read was a bit vague, and it's something that really annoyed me considering how long we went without this clarification, despite us asking the question as soon as this card was revealed. But for the time being, now we know. If you take this build, you may drop one of your proxy mines and your cluster mines at the start of the game. The extra munitions will mean that you have one more to use during the game. Straightforward, really cool. Not a bad use of the system slot, considering we have R4E1 in this and not a lot of points spare to use on the system upgrade. I think it's solid. Obviously, if you were able to shave off points elsewhere, you could go advanced sensors or fire control system, but if this is the way you want to fly it, awesome, cool, no worries. Now, just going to the start of the list, the expertise in TLT on both of these guys, and I'm not really a fan of this. Basically, TLT gives you certain odds that you'll hit your opponent 2 times. Expertise is a 4-point investment to slightly increase those odds, or arguably significantly increase those odds, that's fine. Expertise is a 4-point investment. It's not something to do lightly. And the issue I have is when it goes on another ship, say with just 3 red dice primary attack, you're giving it a hard boost to the amount of times it will hit and the amount of hits it will deliver. When you're comboing it with TLT, you're not really capitalizing on that well. You're only increasing the odds of getting those 2 hits off TLT. No matter what you do with TLT, you cannot get more than 2 hits. So expertise used in that function is probably just a bit too expensive. 4 points to increase the odds of TLT. You've basically got a 10-point TLT that's a bit more reliable. I don't think that's 4 points better than just the 6-point TLT. I mean, sure, you can use expertise with the primary as well, but the issue with the Skirk Bomber is it's not that good at keeping ships in its arc unless you use Talon rolls, and if you use Talon rolls, you're stressed and expertise doesn't proc anyway. So honestly, I'm not a big fan of expertise. The issue as well is you have 2 ships which relatively don't comfortably get to 50-ish points each. So you've obviously sunk a lot of points in this because you had the points spare. Having said that, before you have a system slot on Nym, so you could say switch out the minefield mapper for something else, go for advanced sensors. Advanced sensors on Nym with say an engine upgrade is very, very powerful. It gives you a lot more flexibility in the way he flies. You could go for push the limit on both of these ships. That's another good use of your points, and that saves another couple of points, which could be invested elsewhere. You can always upgrade the bombs you have on the ships, for example. You could upgrade Sol Sixxa's proxy mines into cluster mines if you wanted to increase the amount of cluster mines on the map. I know proxy mines are better with Cad Bane, but cluster mines are arguably better with Nym. It just depends how you have a look at it. There's a lot to do here. I'm just not a fan of expertise here, and that's really the crux of what I'm thinking. Apart from that, it's a really good solid list. Sol Sixxa and Captain Nym is something a lot of people were talking about when they first came out. I haven't actually seen it get flown yet, and I'll be really curious to see where it goes. So let me know how it goes. I'm really keen to see how these 2 guys fly together. And last but not least, we have this list by Mr. Doug Popson. At exactly 100 points, we have Captain Nym flown alongside IG-88C. This is really interesting. We have expertise, TLT, bomblet generator, IG-88D, and engine upgrades on Captain Nym. On IG-88C, we have veteran instincts, fire control systems, heavy laser cannon, cluster mines, IG-2000, and auto thrusters. Alright, cool. So basically, IG-88C's build makes a lot of sense. Fire control, heavy laser, yep, that's exactly what we want. Veteran instincts to pilot skill match with Captain Nym makes perfect sense again. Auto thrusters, of course, IG-2000 to combo with IG-88D. And cluster mines, not a usual inclusion on IG-88C or any IG for that matter, but you've flown it alongside Captain Nym, so I can see what you're trying to do there. You're trying to get the best use out of Captain Nym's points. Might not be the best idea, honestly, because you can use those points on Glitterstim, and Glitterstim is a staple of the IGs and a very powerful effect, so it's something to consider if those cluster mines don't do the job you need them to. I feel like just keeping the IG internally efficient is probably the better option that I'd take, but if you want that combo, cluster mines makes a lot of sense. Back to Captain Nym, obviously I just mentioned before, expertise and TLT is not something I'm a huge fan of. However, you can make the argument with this build that with engine upgrades, boosting into range 1 and using that primary is possibly a better way of using expertise. This list might not want to talon roll as much as other Nym builds, and that means you can use the boost to turn him around and get the most use out of those points. When you're doing that big turnaround, you can use TLT, but ideally you're boosting, getting the free evade, and getting into range 1 and getting expertise proccing on your primary, not on TLT. So I'm not a fan of expertise in TLT, but I feel like in this instant, it just makes a bit more sense. I will say, and this is something I noticed a lot when IG-88D as a crew first came out on the Shadowcaster, it was experimented with a lot by me as well. And the issue with the IG-88C combo is you only get that evade if you boost. And that sounds like, oh, well, I'm going to boost sometimes, but it's not a very big combo because there are many instances when you just don't want to boost, but you really want that evade, and it actually gets kind of frustrating. I actually tried it alongside Boba Fett because I like to use Boba Fett as a range 1 brawler. And I just found the more restrained approach to using engine upgrades and boosting in general was better. And because I was doing that, the evade was not helping me because I was never getting it. Obviously, you may say, well, you know what? I'm not going to use the talon rolls in this build, so I'm using the boost to turn around, and it's going to happen more often. It's something you've got to practice and get the absolute most out of you can. But I will say it's not easy, so just keep that in mind. Having said that, I think if you do want to combo IG-88C with Nym, this is probably the best way to do it. Just as a personal preference, I'd use Glitter Sim instead of Cluster Mines on IG-88C. Just as a personal preference, I'm not sure about the use of bombs here because the only thing that combos with Captain Nym is the Cluster Mines and is only a one-of on an IG-88 that really wants to be taking other actions. So we're not getting the best use out of Captain Nym's text. Otherwise, a very cool concept, and I'm very keen to see how something like this would go. And that was the lists using Scum Nym. Thank you so much for submitting that, guys. One thing I just want to mention, we had no list submitted that uses the Rebel Captain Nym, and this is something I actually really want to see. In my opinion, the Rebel Nym is actually the best scope weapon pilot we have available. And I'm surprised it's not sort of more widely adopted. It's a very popular choice alongside Miranda Doney, but it's not something we see all that often. And now considering we have Biggs so heavily nerfed to the point where a lot of people just don't want to fly him anymore, I think it's absolutely a great case to sort of try and introduce Captain Nym into some other builds. Perhaps there's some combos with Rebel Nym and Lowrick. I don't know. I'm very curious to find out actually, because I think this guy's seriously cool and seriously underused. And once again, of course, if you guys have any other lists, please submit them in the comments for me to review later on. Since we last did one of these videos, we've had a lot of new subscribers. In fact, about 150 of you since the last time I made one of these videos. So if any of you newbies watch this, please submit your list. We'll talk about them. Just in the comments, you just need to copy them in, have a quick explanation of why you fly this, why you like it, and we'll have a chat about it. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, like our Facebook page, and I will catch you later.